Yeah, hi folks. Now it appears that the National Party is going through some kind of election review process, which includes diversity recommendations, such as more Maori representation. So once again, the National Party seem to be following Labour down their far-left woke rabbit hole. And this has been going on ever since that progressive lefty John Key hijacked the party away from Don Brash, their only leader who actually stood for something. And by the way, diversity is just a polite way of saying division. And Don Brash would never ever have allowed that. Don Brash stood for one rule for all New Zealanders. He wanted to scrap the Foreshore and Seabed Act and abolish Maori seats and get rid of all race-based legislation. In other words, he wanted a country of one people, as the treaty intended, and not this radical separatism we've got today. Anyway, I'll start this off today with a diversity clip from America, but it's kind of related to New Zealand as well.
An airline pilot transports hundreds of people at a time in a thin-walled metal tube going nearly 600 miles an hour, 35,000 feet off the ground. Flying a commercial airliner is dangerous. Like performing heart surgery, no matter how many times you've done it, it's inherently high stakes. People die if you screw up. In the airline business, as in medicine, not killing people is all that matters. So how will racial and gender quotas make United Airlines safer? That's the only question that matters. The company's CEO went on CBS News recently to explain.
Only 7% of United Airlines pilots are women, one of the highest percentages in the industry. And 13% of its pilots are people of color.
They simply don't have the access or the opportunity.
In an exclusive interview with CBS News, United CEO Scott Kirby is announcing a new effort to bring balance to the flight deck.
We're excited at United to be announcing the United Aviate Academy to address the structural issues with the makeup of our pilots.
So only 7% of United Airlines pilots are female, fretted CBS. Only 13% aren't white. Okay, but why exactly should we care about those numbers? An airline pilot's job is to land the plane safely. Everything else is irrelevant. If 100% of United Airlines pilots were black women, or Malaysian Muslims, or for that matter, white men from Alabama, not a single sane person would complain about it as long as the airplanes didn't crash. Safety is all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. No one really cares about who is flying the plane. They're only concerned about getting to their destinations safely.
But you'll notice the CEO of United didn't mention safety. Safety is no longer that airline's top concern. Identity politics is. Now, United will dispute that characterization, of course. In a statement to this show 2 hours ago, they already have disputed it. United Airlines will continue to uphold its high standards, they told us, but they're lying. We know they're lying, and you know it too, because in the airline business, there is only one standard that matters, and it is not race and it's not gender. It's competence.
Yes, and competence applies to all jobs, including politics. So why is the National Party even entertaining this idea of diversity?
Strengthening leadership and dealing with a lack of diversity are on the National Party's must-do list. That's according to recommendations made in its top-secret election review.
Newshub has leaked an abridged version of the recommendations, which were sent to the party's membership list last night. Political editor Tova O'Brien reports.
Yeah, I wonder what she's praying for. More gay marriages or more late-term abortions, perhaps.
A lot went wrong for National on the election campaign. The party couldn't get its messaging straight. It was distracted, leaking and lacking leadership.
None of this is secret. I mean, this is stuff we've talked about before and we've moved past it.
National didn't want to pick over the bones in public. Its election review kept under lock and key.
Obviously, that's enough.
But last night, a sanitised, abridged version of the recommendations was sent to the party membership and swiftly forwarded to Newshub. It hones in on the Auckland Central mess. Remember this guy?
Look, I'm in Manuera.
A regional chair pretending to be a dude called Merv to undermine a candidate. Now changes have been recommended to be able to sack party officials on matters of integrity and honesty.
AKA Merv?
Sorry, Merv? No.
Diversity and Māori representation are also major work-ons.
Paul Goldsmith obviously is of Ngāti Porou.
Yeah, really.
The review recommends embedding Te Treaty of Waitangi into the party constitution. At the moment, it's not included or even referenced. The review also says a board seat should be specifically allocated to a Māori director.
I think it is absolutely crucial that the National Party, like this country, does not go down a path of quotas.
But Judith, diversity means quotas.
To really drive that point home, Judith Collins swiftly went on to make this call.
Well, segregation was not something that worked in the 20th century, and
Yeah, and the other day she actually said something quite smart about that.
Review International's performance at the last election has been exclusively leaked to our news hub political editor Tova O'Brien, and she's been good enough to give us the details. We talked about the shambles, it was all consensual. There's the leaking, there's the leadership, there's all these things. And joining us to discuss this is a less than impressed National Party leader, Judith Collins. Judith, give us to us, go.
well, actually, that's not a leak. It was, it was sent out last night to all the members going to the Northern Regional Conference. These are the recommendations that the conference members are going to be voting on. It is not a leak, and another breathless announcement from your political editor saying it's a leak is simply wrong. And what I'm here to talk about is the fact that this country is actually going to, is looking with this Māori Health Authority into a separatist health system, and the next steps will end up being education and justice.
Yeah, and she's absolutely correct there. Our Maori separatists will be pushing for those next. But Judith, having Maori seats is also separatism.
I think the board is going to be considering that, and it's a question that should always be asked for the National Party. It's just like we'd, actively will be pursuing the issue. It's certainly one of my issues is to make sure that we stand in the Maori seats, or at least some of them.
No, Judith, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You're either 100% for Maori separatism or you are 100% against it. There is no half measure.
And I don't believe it's going to be appropriate in the 21st.
Conflating the government's planned Māori Health Authority with segregation.
She might want to look towards the review from their election. They might see that actually recognising Māori is a good thing.
Yeah, so recognising separatism is now a good thing.
Is she's actually using segregation to race bait.
That's rich coming from a race baiter.
Really abhorrent. Probably the lowest of lows I've seen Judith go, to be honest.
The review also found Collins' leadership needs work. Strengthening leadership is a key task. Bad behaviour needs to be called out and dealt with quickly across the party. And succession planning needs to be encouraged.
A leadership succession plan, do you have one?
Well, that will be up to the caucus and the party.
The question is, will Collins have any say in when the succession plan is activated?
Well, kia ora, Tova. Is there a Judith Collins succession plan?
Oh, yeah, but the problem for Judith Collins is that she won't have any say in it. Those kind of cloak and dagger coup conversations never really stopped since the election campaign. And it's just unlikely, though, that they'll kick into gear until next year, which leaves Judith Collins hanging a little bit. She's kind of a lame duck, sitting duck, which means we may see more of that kind of inflammatory rhetoric that we saw from Collins today. Sure, there are plenty in the National Party who don't want to see those separate initiatives targeted at Māori, despite the National Party being in power when whānau ora was introduced and despite the National Party first funding kohanga reo. But the language, the evocative language that Collins used today, separatist, segregated, it goes further than the National Party was talking about the Māori Health Authority when it was actually announced last week. And that kind of desperate language worked for former National Party leader Don Brash back at Orewa, but that was nearly 2 decades ago. And actually, Collins has gone further.
No, she hasn't. She's just tinkering around the edges. Brash was a real leader who was opposed to all forms of separatism. And here's a taste of him back in the day.
There'll be people, however, who will be not terribly happy.
Richard Long and his team had primed the media for a big splash.
This is going to set out that Don Brash can actually deliver the goods. The election is 18 months away, but they're effectively starting their campaign now, and they need a recipe for success.
Over the last 20 years, the treaty has been wrenched out of its 1840s context and become the plaything of those who would divide New Zealand from one another, not unite us. We are becoming a society that allows people to invent or rediscover beliefs for pecuniary gain. Iwi are developing a central role with respect to local government. They possess the power to veto many development projects which could provide us all with jobs. This process is becoming deeply corrupt, with some requirements for consultation resulting in substantial payments in a system that looks nothing other than standover tactics. Where does all this stop? We will remove the anachronism of the Maori seats in Parliament. We will deal with the foreshore issue by legislating to return to the previous status quo. We intend also to remove divisive, race-based features from legislation. The Indigenous culture of New Zealand will always have a special place in our emerging culture and will be cherished for that reason. But we must build a modern, prosperous, democratic nation based on one rule for all.
Yeah, now folks, I couldn't find a full video of that Orewa speech, so I've posted a link to a written version of it in the description below. Yeah, so once again, folks, we have no viable political party on the horizon. The New Conservatives and Billy Take Everything are finished, and Sue Gray spews out the same holistic hippie language that the Greens do. So that's all you need to know about her party.